Let the dominoes fall. The Dallas Jackals Dispersal Draft results have been released, and a flurry of moves have followed up that we need to catch up on. On this week's episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show, we break them all down. Plus, Anthem Rugby Carolina's Jake Turnbull joins the show to talk about his club, his offseason USA Rugby, plus react to his fantasy ranking. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Hi, I'm Jake Turnbull, player for Anthem Rugby Carolina, and you're listening to Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 129 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in the MLR. With you each and every single week, I'm Ryan Yee. With me is Matt Yee, Devin Vanderpool, who's typically with us. A little bit of internet issues on his end in the Great White North. I don't know what it's about up there. It
that's what happens. That's what happens when you live in a town that still runs on the wheel.
Yeah.
And still, you get around in horse and carriage. That's just how it is. That's the sacrifices that you make.
Hey, that's what we like to. That's what we make it work for Vandy, and unfortunately, just technology is something we can't deal with. But hey, we try to do our best. But hey, yeah, Vandy will try to be back on here if he can, as he deals with his internet stuff happening in the Great White North. But Matthew, nonetheless, like I said at the top of the show, let the dominoes fall. I mean, it might be the off season, but it doesn't feel like the offseason in terms of everything that's going down. Obviously, the talk of the town is the dispersal draft results that finally were released. Obviously, we had Brock Gallagher of the former Dallas Jackals, new member of the Seattle Seawolves, on the show a few episodes ago, who said the dispersal draft was happening. We hadn't heard anything about it. And then finally, a couple weeks later, we finally get some results. So, of course, we're going to talk about that in this show. And then after that dispersal draft, a whole other bunch of stuff has been happening in terms of roster moves. Again, the dispersal draft really sparking what is a whole bunch of roster moves that have happened recently over the past week.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like this past week, everything has just blown up in terms of roster moves. People have been announcing their departures. People have announced their signings. And yeah, we'll get into it. I think it's going to be a jam-packed news and notes part.
Yeah, jam-packed news and notes part, but it's also a jam-packed show in its entirety because we also have a special guest, first-time guest on this show, Anthem Rugby Carolina's front rower, Jake Turnbull, is joining the show in just a bit of time. It's going to be fun to talk with him about kind of everything that's happened this offseason, ranging from obviously his experience overseas with Team USA. And then also, of course, he's kind of in the thick of it with Anthem being a big part of those moves that have happened over the course of the past week, to get his take on it. And of course, chat a little bit of fantasy MLR with him as well. So Maddie, it's a jam-packed one. And I guess we've got no time to waste to get right into it, huh?
No time.
All right, let's get right into it. But before we do, as we always say every single episode, if you aren't already, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers, anywhere that you are on socials, Instagram, Facebook, X. We are there. That's how we keep people in the know when it comes to everything fantasy MLR, and how you can possibly be first in the know for when you can join a fantasy MLR league. Of course, we're on this YouTube channel as well, at the Fantasy Ruckers. Like, subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube. And we're also on podcasts, of course, wherever you do get podcasts. We got a Discord with a great community. That link is down below to join. You can chat with a whole bunch of really fun people when it comes to fantasy MLR, but also rugby as a whole. When it comes to the offseason moves that have happened over the past week, a lot of that was discussed and shot out there on our Discord, with people being in the loop there and really passionate MLR fans. And of course, we also have our website, thefantasyruckers.com, the official platform for the Fantasy Ruckers Fantasy MLR League. So we've got a whole bunch of stats up there. It's where we played Fantasy MLR for the 2024 season, and it's where we'll be playing Fantasy MLR for the 2025 season. So again, check that out. Like, subscribe, join the Discord, follow on socials. Again, join the movement that is Fantasy MLR.
Let's do it.
All right, well, let's react to it, Maddie. I guess we can't leave any time to waste when it comes to getting our opinion on this dispersal draft. In
Yeah.
this episode, we're going to give our initial reaction to kind of everything that went down. Then we're going to take the week to kind of digest that, go through the fantasy numbers. And next episode, we'll really do a deep dive when it comes to the fantasy impact of this dispersal draft and where people ended up. But initial reaction, Maddie, what did you think? Obviously, some interesting names. They're going to some interesting places here following the release of the results.
Yeah, I mean, again, I take these with a grain of salt simply because the dispersal draft does not mean anybody is actually signed. It just means that they've drafted them, and it's a little bit of a formality. Yes, it's actually a draft, but it also requires there to be an agreement between the players after the picks are made. But I think there's a lot of picks there, and we'll get into it. But a lot of picks there that just really make sense for me, right? Like we talk about the Sam. I'm like the first reaction, Sam Gullah being drafted first overall by Anthem. I think that just makes sense, right? Like that one, he's an American player. He's the future of American rugby.
Mm-hmm.
Anthem is exactly where he should be. And then you just look at all the moves that Anthem made during this draft. I mean, it just a lot of movement. I thought it was really interesting to look at the results, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the signings that happen after it.
So yeah, Anthem was a big name that was in there. Obviously, Sam Gullah being that first overall pick, which I guess I don't think was much of a surprise when it comes to the Dallas Jackals and who was available in this draft. And again, we don't know.
And you look at the first two, like Sam Gullah, McKeen, Alican. Both of those guys are youngsters of American rugby, and they're both going to Anthem.
Sure. Again, my point being is that I think that Sam Gullah was one of the best players that were available there, and it's no surprise to see him go number one. Obviously, Anthem taking advantage of that, taking Sam Gullah with that number one overall pick, and then to Maddie's point with McKeen Alican, another young American, the Anthem making the move there to acquire the second pick in the dispersal draft from from LARFC with that 5th round pick and 2025 cap space to jump up, get another young American. I mean, it wasn't surprising. But then again, you go down the line and a bunch of other big names are going to some, again, interesting places like we mentioned. Vogan Isaacs going to RFC LA. I think that's a match made in heaven. We've had Andrew Coe on the show before and about the fast-paced electric style that they play with. Vogan Isaacs being one of those players that is fast, is electric, obviously had that injury with Dallas last season, but he now goes to a team that kind of complements his game style there as well.
Yeah,
Sam Tuifua on the Houston SaberCats is a scary one to think about too. Again, a team that emphasizes on the forward pack and plays through their forwards, and Sam Tuifua being, again, if it wasn't going to be Sam Gullah, Sam Tuifua was another guy that was in their back row that was just electric. And the notion and the thought of him being with Houston is pretty scary as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's another one that I really liked, and we'll break it down a bit more, but in next episode. But yeah, that one, the Sam Tuifua one to Houston, I think, they have Ronan Murphy. Well, I'm not sure if Ronan Murphy's still with them. But Sam Tuifua is definitely going to be a great addition to that back row.
And other guys also to kind of go down the list. DeWalt Coates going to the Seattle Seawolves, another interesting one. Obviously, a memorable 2024 season that he had with the Jackals, with especially that 4-try performance that he had in the season. Again, going to a team that's established. Seattle Seawolves going to be fun to see there. I mean, it's interesting in terms of all these players on these names that you're seeing going to these really established teams. It's going to be fun to see what they are going to do with this new opportunity.
Yeah, and hopefully by the time when we break this down next episode with the fantasy lens and going into a bit of detail on these guys and this movement, there's a bit more signings announced, so we can really talk with some more, I guess, confirmed signings and confirmed placements of players. So looking forward to it.
Which pick do you like the best there, Maddie?
I mean, it's hard not to like the first pick by Anthem, but for me, I really like that Vogan Isaacs pick to RFCLA, and I really like that Tuifua pick to Houston. Those ones I think are real good picks.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Yarrow Gomez Vara to New England Free Jacks too on there, I think is a very interesting one.
It's a good pick, but you think about it, and again, we'll dive into it next episode. But like you think about it, and you look at that back row room. Do they really need him? Yeah, of course, everybody could use him, but like, I think his impact could have been bigger somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, fantasy wise, but I mean, New England isn't complaining. I mean, you go with another Vian Conradi injury, and you have a guy like Euro Gomez Vara that can step right in. I mean, that's pretty electric. So again, we'll go in from a more of a fantasy lens next episode and really break this down in terms of where we like some of these players and who maybe increased in fantasy value heading into 2025, who may have decreased in fantasy value, kind of alluding to that, like Matthew's point, like if a guy like Euro Gomez Vara who saw so much opportunity in Dallas with him, playing almost every single match. Does he kind of lose some of that value because he goes to New England that has a studded and loaded back row room, and then you have guys, like Sam Tuifu and things like that who might see some increased opportunity. Vogan Isaacs again. So we'll break that down again next episode. But again, dispersal draft finally out. And you can go check on it's all on socials. James Dealey, who we had on last episode, posted it on his brand new website, the North American Rugby Database, narugBydB.com. You can see a full detailed list of all the picks that went there. And again, to Matthew's point, when these players get drafted, these players, their signing rights are being selected, not this physical player themselves. They still have to come to an agreement. I think most of them will, but we have seen in the past that may not always be the guaranteed case. But again, tune in next week, and we will make sure to break all of that down when it comes to dispersal draft. Moving on here a little bit, Maddie, we know that with the dispersal draft, and we kind of alluded to it in past episodes, is that there were going to be signings and there were going to be roster moves being made in coordination of this. There's going to be a little bit more clarity in terms of what openings certain teams have, what needs certain teams have, where people are going to go. And we were going to kind of see, like we said, the title of this episode, we were going to see the dominoes fall once these results were released and finalized. One of those teams is the Utah Warriors. In addition to the dispersal draft, they had a pretty big announcement. I'm sure it was in coordination because the dispersal draft did happen, but they made that big announcement that we talked about last week in releasing a large part of their roster. Some very marquee guys, Kayla McEnany, to name a couple, Mika Cruze, who's now with the Seattle Seawolves, Thomas Tuivau, Nick Suchon, Kieran McLeay, among the departures that leave there. But some Utah Warriors fans would have been a little bit maybe skeptical in terms of the direction they were going, hadn't seen the results on the field. They needed to make a change. And they're bringing in some pretty big time names, Maddie. So I'm going to name the guys that are coming in to the Utah Warriors, at least a couple that have been officially announced. And you can tell me whether or not this team is making a step in the right direction. Most recently, literally just, I would say, a handful of hours before the recording of this podcast, the Utah Warriors announced the signing of Samoan international D'Angelo Le'uila. Is that right?
I don't know, but you tried.
I tried. He is going to the Utah Warriors. The fly half center from New Zealand, has played with Auckland, Waikato, Moana Pacifica, and of course, like we mentioned, has represented Samoa in the Rugby World Cup most recently in 2023. So has that Super Rugby experience, has that high level, high tier veteranship that he can bring to the Utah Warriors that is trying to make a change. This signing is in my opinion pretty dang huge. And then I'll round it out with the second big name signing that Utah had was Liam Coltman, joining Utah Warriors from top 14 rugby, but he has made appearances with Otago and the Highlanders, 8 appearances with the All Blacks. Again, a guy that just has a handful and a whole plethora of experience when it comes to high level rugby that he can bring to this Utah Warriors program.
Yeah,
2 huge signings that I think are just electric.
Look, I mean, I think it fills some of the losses that they had. They lose Mika Cruze, they lose a lot in that center pairing, and they bring in D'Angelo Le'uila. I don't think it's that. I think it's Luila or something like that. But anyways, they bring in him to fill in that center combo. I mean, this guy's played for Moana Pacifica. He's played for Waikato in the NBC Bunnies Cup. Yeah, he's definitely going to be a nice addition for them. However, I'm a lot more stoked. And I think if Vandy was here, he would be a lot more stoked. I would be getting him a lot more stoked about this Liam Coltman pick. I mean, I remember watching Liam Coltman be an absolute Iron Man for this Highlanders side, just playing in the zoo and just being the kind of staple hooker for that team for a few seasons. It was just incredible to watch, and the fact that we get to witness that in the MLR is, I'm really looking forward to it. He comes off a season with Leon in top 14, and clearly he wants to continue to play at the age of 34 and play for Utah Warriors and fill a void that Utah clearly needs with the loss of Nick Suchon.
Yeah, so when it comes down to these two signings, I think D'Angelo Leuila is a player that maybe fills in that Mika Kruse role, maybe comes in. We're not really sure
Yeah,
about
I mean,
the
he's
status of
utility.
Paula
He can play.
Sige.
Yeah, he can play
Um,
across all the entire back line. So
right.
I think that's just a perfect fill in.
So it should be interesting there. And then in terms of the little bit more clarity in terms of Liam Coltman, I mean, where does this guy slot in when it comes to his fantasy production? Like your initial reaction here. I mean, for me,
Well,
like Nick Suchon was a guy that, came into the Utah Warriors program last season, coming from Old Glory DC. I drafted him relatively high as a marquee player who had that experience in the front row position, who had that production. This is a guy that has even more experience, even more production in better leagues, and comes to a high-powered Utah Warriors offense. I mean, he might just slide himself right up there with the top names like the Butcher in Dylan Fawcett, like guys like that right up there.
yeah, but it's gonna depend on the way that Utah plays and the Utah team. So, um, we'll have to see. Uh, Yeah, we'll have to see. I'll have to do a bit more research. I haven't watched him play in a long time, so I'll have to do some film study before I can make any comments on that. But
All right.
look, yeah,
Well,
I think he's going to be the starting hooker for Utah, and he's going to be drafted. He's going to be on teams this year. It's just a matter of how high up he's going to get drafted and how much of an impact he's going to make.
let's find the early line then. Before we move on to here, Andrew Quattrin
No, I'm not Quattrin.
or Liam Coltman.
No, Quattrin.
All right, Devald Kotza
Now
or Liam Coltman.
Kotze.
Fawcett or Coltman.
Yeah, Fawcett.
All right, Pita Neasu or Coltman.
Yeah, probably Peter Asu.
Okay.
I mean, it's just hard. We'll have to see. I don't know. Utah, we'll have to see. I think there's been a hooker that has done really well in Utah, and he did that through tackling and breakdown steals, and that was Henry Bell as recently. And we'll have to see.
All right. And then again, the Warriors making a couple other youngster signings: Cole Semu, Tielu Sagala, Papa Matalau, Mason Barker, and Tessie Niapolusu. How'd I do with that? Not too
No
bad, I don't
clue.
think. Younger guys, local guys that have come up through the Utah Warriors ranks that I've signed with them too. So a little bit of depth there, along with two marquee names. Okay, shifting on to some other signings because again, there's a whole bunch that we need to get to. From the San Diego sides of thing, it sounds like MLR is going to have the first ever Mexican player in the league, and that is Alejandro Pradillo. I'm almost confident with that one. He's capped at both the 7s and 15 levels for Mexico. Played at the Pan Am Games in 2012. Again, a guy that offers experience. San Diego, again, a lot of older guys there. Does he slot in? It'll be interesting to see how Pradillo kind of fits in that San Diego offense.
Yeah, I got no clue. So we'll find out.
All right. Then moving on. Kind of funny here. This is two kind of linked news, but it was announced a few days ago that Mitch Wilson was departing from the New England Free Jacks. He's a guy that is the joint leader in games played. You really think about Mitch Wilson, you think about the New England Free Jacks. His time up there in the Northeast is done. And ironically enough, USA Rugby released its travel team for the men's Eagles November tour that will be heading over to Europe to play Portugal, Tonga, and Spain. Again, we'll talk to Jake Turnbull about this in just a bit when it comes to that tour specifically. But what they didn't realize, I don't think, is that they put down every player's current club. And under Mitch Wilson, it didn't say not available. It didn't say New England Free Jacks. That maybe had it a little bit dated, but it actually has it as Anthem RSC. So did USA Rugby unintentionally confirm that Mitch Wilson is going to Anthem RSC? I would like to think so. And again, this just falls into that category and the thing that makes sense in terms of a USA Eagle going to the Anthem Rugby Carolina, who's looking to develop their U.S. internationals, and really is not so much of a surprising move when you look deeper into it.
This Anthem team is going to be a wagon next year. They're going to be good.
Yeah, and we'll talk to again Jake Turnbull a little bit more about that in terms of how excited he is with some of the names that he's getting. Just think about that. Just in the past week, Sam Gala, Ali Khan, Mitch Wilson, all going to the Anthem Plus. You got some younger guys coming as well. They had a pretty decent draft early on there. Storty going over, Eric Storty, the rookie, going to Anthem. It, like you said, Matt, should be a pretty exciting team to watch. I don't know if you can really put that money down if they're going to be that 0-16 team like you saw last year. I think confidence will be riding high with this team heading into this upcoming season. Another signing that we got to announce: Old Glory DC has signed center Stephen Hughes to their squad. He comes over from, I want to say, hold on, let me pull it up here. He comes over from Wales, played
Newport
with
Dragons, or
yep,
yeah,
Dragons, Scarlets, and now goes to Old Glory DC. Former Wales U20 player, again, a center player that's going to come in and I think would have a pretty big impact here with this Old Glory DC side. A pretty solid signing here.
Yeah, no, I like the signing. I think again the center room, filling that center room is huge. William Talatana didn't have a great season last year, so I think filling and adding more depth to that room is just great for Old Glory DC.
All right, and flurry of departures for the NOLA Gold. A whole handful of players being announced that they will no longer be with the team. Sam Klimkowski, OJ Noah, Masiu Kuroy, Augusto Bohm, among those names that will not be back with the NOLA Gold. I would imagine there are going to be some fill-ins. Again, no one that is particularly, at least from a fantasy perspective, that big. I mean, OJ Noah was, I think,
OJ Noah,
here and there.
Yeah,
Augusto Bohm was a streamer here and there, but no one necessarily as a note.
Yeah, I think OJ Noah, Kuroy, and Bohm were all guys that have been picked up and streamed at least and provided some fantasy production. So it'll be sad to see them go, but yeah, I mean, it just means that we're in store for some good signings from NOLA, who they brought in a French superstar. I mean, they brought in I'm gonna have to pull up his name, but they brought in a French superstar to their team. They had a whole video surrounding it. He was doing a whole commentary about these teams signing players. They're having like Utah Warriors. They had their cool little thing with all the player background. NOLA Gold announced this signing of
Kellyan Galatier.
There we go. Kellyan Galatier. Yeah, they announced that signing with a cool little video. But yeah, he's a staple in French rugby. I'm looking forward to seeing him in NOLA. So he's going to be a massive fill-in for that team, even though they're losing some of these depth guys.
Yeah, so it should be interesting. Fintan Coleman is a guy that is also a guy that will be leaving there. But yeah, Kellyan, a back row player, blindside, number 8 that he's played in French, going to go in NOLA. Again, that's kind of a back row that also is a little bit intimidating there. Could see a lot of production. You know how important back row players
he's going to be sick this year
in fantasy. So maybe a guy that you can pick up. And then from
you're drafting him.
Front office standpoint, there is one kind of as note. Sam Harris, a familiar name, former head coach of the Chicago Hounds, was relieved of his duties midway through the season or towards the tail end of the season. And it was announced that he is going to be the attacks coach for RFC LA. Interesting there. I know that there were pictures of him hanging around in LA, and it looks like there was reason behind it because he is sticking in LA to be their attacks coach.
Yeah, love to see it. I'm sure Co's happy about that one. And we'll see how it impacts their offense and their team.
Yeah, should be good. All right. Well, do you want to get to the part of the show that everyone is probably tuning in for?
Let's do it.
We are happy to bring on a new guest of the show, Eagle number 562 and front rower for Anthem Rugby Carolina. Jake Turnbull joins the show for the first time. Jake, thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate you taking the time to hop on the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Thank you so much for having me, boys. Big fans. So massive honor to get the call up. Cheers.
Massive honor. The honor is ours, Jake, for you taking the time. It's always cool. I know that there is always a little bit incentive for players to be checking their fantasy stats, and maybe people are relying kind of on their high performance there. But it is always cool to see that and hear from the players themselves that they are paying attention to what we're doing here on the Fantasy Ruckers.
I'm pretty sure there's a correlation between the guys that come on this show and their fantasy stats the following season. Andrew Coe, he's been great fantasy wise. Andrew Quatrin, also great fantasy wise. Both of them friends of the show.
Both beasts. So if I have a good season next year, you'll be the first person I'll be thanking, mate. I'll send you a few Christmas cards.
There we go. I appreciate it. On the Christmas card list. That's all we can ask for. We'll put it up on our back wall here. But Jake, we did talk about this before we got on the air here, was that you are our first USA Rugby International on this show. So you can put that on your resume. You have Eagle number 562, and then you have the very first American rugby player on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. That's right by
Mate,
that.
how good's that? Oh, that's a massive honor. Jeez, you just made my day, lads.
There you
I'm
go.
very chuffed.
I feel like I'm betraying Canada.
It's true.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. You've turncoated.
There
I
you
have
go.
the jersey right behind me, and I feel like I'm betraying them, stabbing them in the back.
But hey, for this one
thank you,
episode, we'll more than happy talk a little bit about USA Rugby. I know that we have a lot of listeners and viewers that follow along on USA Rugby. So definitely something that they are going to want to hear about. But let's start off, Jake. Let's talk about the offseason, man. Obviously a busy one for you. Where you are, where you training? How has the offseason been treating you? Let's start with there.
Oh, I don't really call it an off season, which is a good thing, because obviously we go straight from MLR into we had those July series against Romania, against Scotland. Then we get about 5 weeks off, straight to PNC. Now we've got another 5 weeks off and go into the November series. So you might get a couple of days to decompress after the tour, but you're straight back into it, training. And for me, my wife, she's Australian, so we come back here, spend a couple of weeks here, and I'll do my training. So luckily, I can train with Lindsay Stevens, proud Canadian. So we both live here, so we can train together. Also, Greg Peterson, the captain, we do some training together. Other than that, it's quite nice. I'll do my little gym session down at my old club, do a run there, and then it's right near the beach. So after that, I just jump into Bondi Beach and have a coffee there, and it's quite a nice day. Yeah, really enjoying it.
I mean, it feels sounds like a nice summer for me. Grab coffee, play a little rugby. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Do you like that as do you like that as a player, where it kind of feels like it's constant for you, where you're constantly kind of in the groove of things? There's not really time to necessarily shut off fully. I know for a lot of players, they'd like to have maybe a couple months off to kind of just regenerate. But for you, kind of going through that, is it something that you enjoy, having that constant kind of training happening?
Yeah, I love it. I much prefer that. But before I was in the international setup, we'd had 6 months off, and you might come back and play a bit of club footy in Australia or wherever you want to go. But I much prefer being on all the time. And I know we'll get some time off over Christmas, which is important just to switch off. But I love being on and having that purpose and having that drive to keep you going. So yeah, any time to play footy is unreal. So I love it. Anytime stay involved, I'm all for it.
Yeah, spoken like a guy that absolutely loves this sport. I mean, let's talk about now the past season, and let's talk a little bit about Anthem Rugby Carolina before we get into some of the international stuff. I mean, for you've had an MLR career so far, where you've experienced, I think, a lot of different places. Obviously, with the Houston SaberCats, with the Austin Gilgronis, with the Old Glory DC, with the Seattle Seawolves, and now with the Anthem. And we get what they're trying to do there in terms of helping develop, USA Rugby and get through that. When you have that experience and you kind of look through those clubs that you've played for, and knowing the intentions that Anthem have in terms of why they are who they are. What makes them different, and kind of your early experiences being with Anthem Rugby Carolina, how has it been different than maybe the past clubs that you've played for?
That's a good question. Yeah, look, we all know the thing about Anthem, right? It's at the get-go, it wasn't like, oh, hey, we're here to win a championship, right? It was more about developing players. And I won't go into detail about which club, but some clubs that I've been at, they weren't all about, and it's fine, right? This is a business, right? So it weren't about developing the young guy. And you might have these guys who, like, potential-wise, they're a gun. Well, they could be a gun, but they just become professional trainers. So they spend the whole season carrying a bag, or holding a bag, sorry, and don't really get those vital minutes to develop their own game. And they kind of fall through the cracks. Like, I've seen some really good players who could have been awesome MLR players, or maybe even just got to crack that international stage. But they kind of fall through the cracks just because of the lack of development. And I understand, going back to a coach needs to fight for their career, right? And the club needs to perform and win because that's how they sell their product to the fans. So with Anthem obviously being run by World Rugby, there wasn't a pressure or external pressure to go, hey, look, we need to win, we need to do this. It was all about, let's just get a group of guys that probably aren't going to get a lot of minutes in their first year at other clubs, but give them a lot of minutes and see how they go. And I think it was wonderful. Like you look at your Dylan Fortunes, your Albies, who else is there? Shane Barry, Junior Gaffer. Junior Gaffer's unbelievable. And all these guys have just, mate, like developed exponentially where they wouldn't have probably got that experience anywhere else. So it's definitely ticked the box, in my opinion.
Yeah. I feel like Junior Gaffer is the perfect staple of that, of where he was in this New England Free Jack system where the center room was just stacked.
Yeah.
And he comes to Anthem and he is just the star, one of the stars of the back line for that Anthem side, and just unreal to watch.
And he's so it's crazy. He's got like an old head. Like, mate, you think he's 35. He just, the way he carries himself is unbelievable. Like, he's got such a big career ahead of him, and such a nice guy, but just a beast on the field. So, I'd say, mate, they'll probably building a statue of him outside of the Carolina Stadium one day.
How excited were you when you heard that he was sticking with Anthem for the long run, when finally they traded for his full rights from New England? Were you pumped?
Oh, man, I felt like a kid on Christmas. Couldn't ask for a better present. So, yeah, he was, I think, we had to lock him down, and, hopefully he has a long career in that Anthem blue jersey.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we talk about players and their development and how last year, I think it was really great. Like you said, we saw a lot of these guys that would be sitting on the bench or not, like worrying about making the 23 for a lot of these other MLR teams. And now we're getting into this offseason where we're starting to see a trend of a lot of these, I guess, staple MLR guys starting to make moves towards Anthem. Guys like Connor Mooneyham, who's been confirmed. The rumors around Mitch Wilson, who apparently USA Rugby confirmed it in their site. Some of the picks. Well, they had him linked to Anthem Rugby when they put his affiliate club. So
that'd be awesome if we get him.
Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, in the dispersal draft, you got Sam Gala, McKean Alican. You look at some of these guys coming in, and it almost feels like this is moving away from that idea of giving the younger guys a chance, or they're still young, but they are staple names in the MLR. Are you at all, I guess, with the thought of these guys coming in, worried that outlook might change if you guys start playing winning rugby, start winning games, and that kind of development focus starts changing?
No, not exactly. The first year, that was obviously the vision, was to give these guys and give them an opportunity and see kind of how they react. Throw them in the deep end.
Right.
Going into next year, I don't know if we have signed those guys or not. If we do get them, amazing. But the whole idea is obviously to build American rugby players. And if we were to get guys like Sam Gola, Connor Mooneyham, Mitch Wilson, McKean, that's awesome, right? And they're guys who've won in their own right. Like Sam was, the man back in college. Connor's been to a grand final. McKean's played overseas. But to get those key figureheads in that squad is so pivotal for these young guys to learn how to act day to day, right? And this year, we didn't win a game, right? However, we did a lot better than what people thought we were going to do, and we were competitive. And the best thing about it was that back end of the year, you'd think a lot of other teams gave up and they kind of checked out and just, did whatever they needed to do, did whatever they wanted to do, sorry. But us, like, we still showed up and had a crack, and, we competed till the very end. However, losing does become part of your DNA, especially at that young age, at quite an impressionable age. So to bring those guys in who are going to, if we do bring them in, help us win, it's only going to be more beneficial. So at some point, the vision does have to change from, let's just give a young guy a shot, to now being, it's American-based players, but we've also got to have a winning mindset. And that's what's going to change year on year. And there will come a point, I'd imagine, that'll be like, okay, now we've got a very competitive squad of proud American players. Let's go win a title. And that's just the evolution of how it will work. But once again, like I said, it's not going to be that external pressure for the first couple of years. But
And I
Premier's
have
obviously a
to,
good thing
yeah,
as well. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
yeah. I was gonna say I have to say to your point that even though you guys didn't win a game, you guys were one of the most electric 0-16 teams
Mm.
I have ever seen in the history of the MLR. I mean, we saw the Dallas Jackals over the past few years, but you guys were something else. It was fun to watch. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I
fun to
have it.
play in. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I have it written in my notes, Jake, that I think something that we said each and every week was you said it there, competitive, right? Like I don't think your record got necessarily um, distinguishes or kind of exemplifies kind of what the product you guys were putting on the field was necessarily. But to your point as well, I think as you guys kind of approach to that theme or get closer to making that kind of jump and be like, hey, we can compete for a title, that only reflects on the development and the growth that USA Rugby as a whole is kind of moving towards, right? Like if you guys are doing good, that means the almost the best of with what is intended for this Anthem team, the best of USA Rugby is supposed to be on that team. And if you guys are winning, that means you kind of are reflecting that success. So you, I guess, would hope that you get there, you guys get to that title point at that time. I guess though, kind of alluding back to that season that you had last year, obviously from a record standpoint, you can say what you will, but from a development standpoint, or just from how you would rate kind of how last year's season went from the behind the scenes, what, like you're saying, maybe what people outside looking in may have not seen, what would you rate in terms of success, the Anthem season? And from a developmental standpoint, do you think that it did the job that it was intended to do? And you saw kind of the fruits of that labor through the course of that 16 game season?
Oh, look, I'd say 10. Yeah, obviously, you want to win a game, right? And we had a couple of chances where we were in it, right? And we definitely, one of our goals was to win a game. We didn't reach that, but it wasn't the be all. Well, it was, in a game, it's sports, right? You want to win. Of course you do. Why else do you play? However, you speak to other people and they were like, mate, we thought you were going to get pumped 100-0. And there were games where we were up at halftime.
Yeah.
Utah, we were up at halftime. I think Seattle, maybe. There's a lot of games where we were very close at halftime. We were in it. LA, we were up at halftime. And, we lost it in the last 4 minutes. But what I say is the fact, what my biggest success of that team and what we had and what our goal was we stayed in it from day one till the final day. No one checked out. No one got toxic and turned on each other. Everyone rocked up and still had a crack. Now I look at that and you go, what else could you want? Well, that was that. Now, yeah, next year that will change. Obviously, the goal's going to be higher. But from a realistic standpoint, you couldn't be more proud of these guys who stepped up and had a crack. And it was so fun to watch and it was so fun to be part of. And yeah, it was tough losing, but I don't compare that 0-16 season to the other two teams that have done it previously because they probably were in a different position, right? Yeah. I think we were successful in our own right. But yeah, next year I'd say it'll be a lot different.
Did you feel this? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Ray.
Do you feel old? Because I know that's a close question, but it's like you're talking about these young players, and in a rugby age, you're over 30, you've been on 4 different MLR teams, and this is a team that's bringing in the youngest of young talent. Do you ever sit in the locker room there and you're looking around, you're like, man,
look at Shane Barry and go,
yeah, I'm a 30-year-old guy and I'm playing with these guys that are kind of just getting into their prime. Does that ever hit you?
I don't feel old, like I feel great, but then there's moments like if you're out and you sit there and you go, man, I'm the oldest here by 5 years. Like, what am I doing? You question that. But yeah, it was a bit of a shock to the system when everyone's going off the rage, and I'm like, oh, this isn't fun.
They start saying words that you don't understand. It's just a part of life.
Man, the lingo, I was like, I've got no idea what's going on here. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess kind of related to the age, but more so of your leadership. Did you feel a sense of ownership last season in terms of you were the first almost leader of the culture of what Anthem Rugby was going to be, and also the leader of I guess the development of American rugby? Did you feel any sense of ownership last year of an additional, I guess, role to be a mentor to a lot of these young guys?
Yeah, I guess that was what kind of appealed me to go there. Was to play that role. wasn't the only thing, like wasn't the reason why I went. But there was a big part of that just because I love USA rugby. It's given me so much. Like, my mum's American, so that's why I got the passport. And I did spend a lot of time when I was younger, but then I ended up going to school in Australia. However, USA rugby's given me so much. It's given me the ability to play rugby professionally, to meet amazing people, to become a better person myself, and it's just given me a life I can never be more grateful of. So to then be part of that role, be part of something special, yeah, it was a massive incentive and something I really loved and something I take very seriously. And to step into that leadership role, and I don't know, you have to ask other people. I can't say if I did a good job. I'm not a narcissist, but sorry, like you've got to ask other people if I did a good job or not. I can't give myself a rating. I hope I did a good job. I hope I did people proud. But yeah, it was a massive honor to play that role.
Very cool. Okay, well, last question about Anthem before we get into what you're probably came on this show to find out, your fantasy ranking. What's the goals for Anthem Rugby Carolina heading into 2025? Like, you talk about development. I know it's always good being in kind of different rugby programs. A lot of teams like to set tangible goals on what is a successful and meaningful season for a certain team. Kind of early on, I know, but if I had to ask you right now in terms of Anthem Rugby Carolina for 2025, as a team, what's kind of a successful year in that sense?
Successful year. If we get the squad that we want to get, why not push the playoffs? And however, at the end of the day, it's not, we're not, it's not the be all or end all, right? But it's again, developing other players and winning competitive moments. So for us, from 0 to 6, from that kickoff to about 60-minute mark, we were quite competitive. We stayed in that, but then around 60 to 80-minute mark, that last 2 minutes of the game is where we kind of fell off. So it's winning those moments at the back end of the game, those pressure moments, and looking at those and be like, okay, was that maybe just lack of experience and not being able to handle the pressure? It's then going into next year is to winning those big time moments and seeing how we combat adversity and those big pressure moments. It's a big one for us. So but why not? You put yourself deep and say like that's a goal. A reachable goal would be like let's try and go for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that's cool to hear.
And just one thing for me is I don't care who gets signed to Anthem and who gets confirmed. But Jake, I just need you to make sure that Anthem Rugby, the style of play that you guys play, doesn't change, because the way that you guys played, regardless of what guys you had, was some of the most entertaining rugby that I think a lot of people can say they saw across the MLR throughout the whole season, regardless of the score, regardless of who was on. It was electric. So regardless of who you guys sign, I hope that doesn't change. And I'm looking to you to keep that going.
Nah, that's Alama. Alama's the man. He has such a fun way to play rugby, and he's just very fast paced, get the ball moving, and I don't think he's going to change anytime soon because our attack was what made us who we were. People loved us. So there's other parts of the game that we've got to work on, which we will. But that was our bread and butter. That was our heart and soul. Was our attack, and that's not going anywhere because that's get bums on seats.
We love fantasy. We love attacking fantasy.
That's what I'm saying. I was just gonna say that's a perfect segue into kind of fans that like that style of rugby is the ones that are playing fantasy MLR. That's for sure. So I guess we'll get into that conversation, Jake. I guess before we get into what you're probably most interested in. Do you play fantasy at all? Any sports, football, any of the sports? Do you partake in that?
I do. I've got 2 fantasy football leagues. Team, sorry, and then I've got an F1 fantasy team.
Oh, F1 guy.
Fantasy.
All right.
Yeah, love F1.
It's nice to see a fellow F1.
Sorry to hear about Ricardo.
Yeah, I know. Oh, look, it's been going on for a while, isn't it? Piastri's the gun.
Oh, I'm a McLaren guy, so I like Piastri. I love what they're doing right now. So
I'm a Verstappen fan. But I'm actually starting to lean towards McLaren. I know, but I love him. He just is what he is. He just I don't think he's fake. He just says what he thinks and goes out and races. Not to say I'm a fan of Horner or Red Bull, but I just like Verstappen because he's just he's ruthless.
I'm a Bottas fan who I've heard is an honorary Australian at this point.
He is, isn't he? Because he's dating the
Tiffany Cromwell, the cyclist. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. He's a man. He's a good bloke.
There you go. All right. Well, so you got fantasy football and fantasy F1 under your belt. So you know the drama and the feeling and the
Oh yeah.
stress that
I
fantasy
do.
brings. So let me tell you what I'll start off with is that guys that had you on their team were not feeling that stress when it came to you because you were one of the most consistent front rowers out there in our league.
Oh,
So
thank you.
that to boost you up a little bit, start off that. But we always play this game with the players that come onto our podcast is we like to have you guess where you think you stack up against the rest of the league. So if I had to ask you out of all, we'll start off with your overall. If you had to guess where out of every single player in in the entire MLR, where you
Oh,
ranked,
wow.
where do you think you
Ooh.
ranked in there?
I mean, how many players are there in the MLR?
There's got to be at least like 350 players.
350. I guess the front row, you're not probably making the big points, are you? So, but I did play a lot of minutes. So let's just say I'm going to go mid-tier, mid-level somewhere. Or we go mid-tier.
Mid-tier? Well, how
Yeah.
does 85 sound? That's not too bad,
Oh,
huh?
that's not too bad. That's all right. I'll take
85,
that.
that's pretty good.
85.
Top
Out
third,
of
top third of
350.
league.
Top third.
You're right. Front rowers often don't get as many points as let's say some of your pretty boys out on the wing who are scoring the tries and things like that. But hey,
Exactly.
doing the
For that.
work and showing some points for that. You scored 91.3 fantasy points on the entire season. We'll make it more
Okay.
fair though, the conversation though. Out of all the front rowers, where do you think you stack up in ranking? What front row did you think you
Out of all
finished?
front rowers, because obviously
Yeah.
hookers are going to get more tries at the back of them all,
Yep.
but they're
Mhm.
obviously going to be the top dogs. Uh, tough one. Let's just say top 20. Hopefully,
Top
top
20.
20.
Too modest, Jake. I love that.
Yeah.
This is my
Yeah.
favorite part of the show because I like how the players, and you're in the same boat, Jake. Is that when players come to our show, they don't want to seem too cocky, right? They don't want to come in hot, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to be
Just
like,
get
oh
fumbled real
yeah,
quickly.
I was a top 3 pick, no question, right? They want to make sure they're a little bit conservative, so it sounds good when we give them a better ranking. I think that's happened on basically every single time we've revealed this. But Jake, you're 7th, man.
Oh, I'll take that.
You're
I
seventh.
think the top prop out
Top
of
10.
all props, if we took out all the hookers, you would be front row 1.
Yep.
Is that right?
So you were the
I'll take
best.
that.
You were the best non-hooker front row in the league
Is that right?
when it
How
comes to
good is
fantasy.
that?
Oh, you
Yeah,
were
I-
huge, man. You every single week. So I pull up your points list here. You averaged around like 6 points every single week. Your highest
Yeah?
was your round 5 performance, where you scored a try, 59 meters gained, and you got total
What, DC?
13.2 fantasy points. That was
Yeah,
pretty good.
right.
Just a tackle
Okay.
monster, man. Double-digit tackles every single week, basically, which I
We
think was
love
huge.
that.
Big grunt work.
Yeah, the grunt
Yeah.
work. So we're doing our best to give the front rowers some love in there. So hey,
Yeah.
you did
Mate,
not too bad.
appreciate that. We need to work on. We
Yeah.
need to work on that next year. Like, show a bit of love to the fatties. Give us,
Yeah.
Well,
more
that's
Yeah,
what
I think
that's what-
next year, now that you've been on the show, now you're gonna have 100+ point season.
Oh,
You're gonna be top
yes.
5, I think.
Hey, boys,
when
unreal.
when
Love
An-
it.
when Andrew Quatrin came on the show, he's and we'll maybe ask you, you can join in on the petition that he's signing, is that he thinks that every front rower's meters gain point should be worth double because of how
Yeah.
much harder they work.
100%. Like
All right.
I think one of the leagues I'm in is a 1.5 tight end. So
Yeah.
like we need to do that for front rowers.
Okay. So I'll add you to the list. If we get a certain number of signatures from the league, we'll see if we can make that change in the Fantasy Ruckers League.
Yeah. What about
There you
like
go.
for a cutout? Cutout, it's like
Yeah.
triple for like a line break assist.
Oh,
Yeah, there
Triple
you
as well,
go.
yeah.
There you go. But not too bad. So you're right up there in terms of front rowers. If I had a list, so who do you think the top front rower in the whole league was?
Top to Lord Coetzee. He's
Second,
got a lot of tries.
right behind
Second.
2.1 points behind Andrew Quatrin.
Oh, there he is. I should have
Yeah.
gone with the Canadian.
So
Lord Coetzee's Canadian as well.
yeah,
Both
there you
Canadian.
go.
There you go.
yeah.
So it was ahead of you was Quatrin, Kotza, Dylan Fawcett,
Yeah, of
Ben
course.
Strang, Pita
Oh, yeah.
Ane Asu, and Martin Vaca.
Ah,
Those were the guys that were in front of you.
All great footy players.
All
Yeah.
fantastic. All fantastic. See, we do our best to give the best players some love in here. In terms
Yeah,
of
love that.
Anthem
Love your work.
players, though, who do you think finished off with the most number of fantasy points out of anyone on Anthem Rugby Carolina?
It's got to be our MVP. I might pronounce this wrong, but T. Rangataria Wakatawa. Has to
That's
be
right.
him.
Tarangatira Waitokia by
Secondly,
far.
I will say Junior.
Yep.
Oh,
Well, you're on point. On point.
Yeah,
Can you go three? 3 for 3.
Ooh, Cliven. He did miss a lot of games though.
5 and his 4. Yeah.
Who's three?
North Harbor.
Oh, Oscar. Yes,
Oscar
Oscar.
Caller. Yep. And you were
Great.
5. So there you go. Top 5 on
Five.
Anthem Rugby Carolina. So
Okay.
you had 91 to put things into perspective. You put up 91.3 fantasy points.
Yeah.
To Rangatira Waitokia, 218.6.
Oof, well
You're
deserved.
close.
So you got a little bit of work to do.
Yeah, only just a little bit off.
just a little bit of work, but you can see kind of how some of the back play may play into the favor when it comes to fantasy MLR. But hey, you're one of the marquee guys though, Jake. 7th. We'll see if you can push that up there to a little bit higher next season. Like Maddie said, the guys that come on our show, they get a little bit of luck, and maybe you can break that top 5.
Mate, awesome. Are you guys going to get like an app going for next year?
We have a website right now going that I'm sure you've checked out. We're doing our best. We're doing our best. So we'll see what we can do. But we're working on making even more leagues for next season. So we'll see. Oh yeah.
Love your
More
work.
guys drafting you. More guys drafting
There you go. I love it.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for so long for someone to start this up. So really appreciate what you guys do. We love it.
It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun hearing your guys' reaction in terms of what you guys think. Again, we'll see. You said top 20 and you got 7, so I think that's a win for you in your books.
I was going to go top 15, sorry, and I was like, oh, I don't want to sound too cocky. So I was like, let's just drop it down to 20.
That's what's going to be funny though. So next time we have you on the show, you're going to feel a little bit confident. You're going to come in hot, and then maybe we're going to have to bring you down to
yeah,
level.
You have to humble me. Just chop me down. That's it.
That's what fantasy does. That's what fantasy does.
Exactly. We just keep everyone honest. That's what we do. But really, really cool to hear kind of your reaction to that. Love hearing that you're following along, and we're doing our best just to help grow this thing. We know that fantasy can have its impact in helping grow the sport. So that's what we're trying to do here. Lastly, Jake, before we let you go, just want to quickly touch on some of the international stuff. Obviously had the experience over in Japan with the Pacific Nations Cup. But you also have the November Test Series coming up, going overseas, playing Portugal, Tonga, and Spain, if I'm correct. Just a quickly, overall thoughts on kind of the state of USA Rugby right now, how you guys are feeling, how you guys are vibing, and how confident you guys are moving into these November tests. I know pretty successful PNC for you guys, making it all the way to that 3rd place match and having some experience there and being able to face a team like Samoa. How is Rugby USA right now in your eyes?
I think it's really good. It's got some unbelievable players coming in, and the squad's quite mixed of experience with a good mix of younger players. And we're playing some really exciting footy. We're playing disciplined footy as well. And if you look at that PNC, we beat you boys. We beat Canada, which was awesome.
Oh yeah,
and
everybody's beating them.
Yeah, no comment touching that. No comment. Japan was an amazing experience, and they're now tier 1 nation as of last year, I believe, or recently. So to go up against them, we had our moments, but we lost a couple of crucial moments. However, Fiji and Samoa, we were very competitive and we were in it. And at Samoa game, unfortunately, we lost the game in the last couple of minutes from a few errors and whatnot. But we're right in it, and it's really exciting to see where Scott Lawrence is going to take us, because he's the mastermind, right? He knows what he wants. He's got a good plan in place. And going into these November tests, they were feeling really good. If we can just carry that momentum from that Samoa game into these tests, it'll be really exciting. And to go up against, get the rematch against Portugal, to go up against Tonga will be really exciting. And I just can't wait to see, where Scott takes this over the next few years. So I think it's a really exciting time to be a USA Rugby fan.
No, I'm sure a lot of USA Rugby fans will be very happy to hear that, and I think there's a lot of confidence and momentum brewing for you guys. So I think it's all going in the right direction, which I know a lot of people are happy to see. Maddie, any last comments for you or questions for Jake?
I guess 3 for 3 in November, you think?
That's the plan.
Love to hear it. Love to hear
The
it.
diplomatic answer.
Yeah,
Love
that's
it.
it. Eh?
There you go. There you go. Well, hey, Jake, really do appreciate it. Taking your time to hop on this show. Love to hear that the players are loving hearing about this fantasy thing. Spread the word, man. Help us
Of
out,
course.
and we'd love for anyone else to hop on the show and get there. I
Yeah.
guess it's a good like psychological test for them to go through in terms of learning their fantasy ranking. In terms of you can find out who the cocky guys are and who maybe the
That's it,
more
eh?
humble guys are. But either way, though, man, we're big fans of yours on the show.
Yeah.
I know a lot of fantasy managers were big fans of yours and them
Yes, I
drafting
was.
you and being quite happy with the performance that you put up for them. They were pretty stoked. So good luck on the November Test series, and would love to have you back on towards the start of the next MLR season to give us a little preview of what you're expecting here for Anthem Rugby Carolina, especially after if some of these signings can get confirmed here.
Yeah, allegedly, eh? If we can get them, it'd be huge. But nah, boys, thank you so much. Cheers, Ryan. Cheers, Maddie.
Yep.
Anytime you want to have me on, just let me know. Big fan of what you do. So any way I can help you out, please let me know.
Appreciate it.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Jake.
Jake. And thank you again to Jake Turnbull for joining the show and talking with us and giving us a little insight into USA Rugby and also Anthem Rugby Carolina. Matt, just a whole bunch of interesting things coming from Jake there. It's really cool to hear.
I think it was really cool that the fact that we got the guy who has been the leader of the Anthem and kind of what and is embodies what the Anthem is and where the Anthem is going.
Right.
I thought that was awesome. I thought he had a lot of great things to say. And yeah, it was also super cool to hear that he actually, he actually follows fantasy rugby and knows his stuff. So
we were talking a little bit off the air there, and he was saying that they're pulling up the fantasy side. That's exactly what we want. We want us to have a little bit of impact, and to hear that Oscar Collar is pulling up the fantasy stats, pulling up Jake's big game in round 5 to say, oh, look at the fantasy stats you got. I mean, that's great. I mean, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I will say I am kind of pissed because I think Vandy's Tilsonburg Wi-Fi somehow infected mine and cut me out of half the interview. So I missed a good start part, but I'm glad I got to catch a lot of the conversation at the end and be part of it because yeah, what a great guy. And looking forward to speaking with him more throughout the season and before the season.
I think we can officially put him on the list of friend
of the show.
Friend of the show. So add another one to the list. Jake Turnbull, again, Eagle number 562, front rower for Anthem Rugby Carolina. A whole lot of confidence with this Anthem side, I think, heading into this year. He couldn't officially say it, but I mean, it's all unconfirmed. Like, if on our end, we'll say it, we'll get the elephant out of the room. Like Mitch Wilson, Sam Gala.
I mean, he clearly had, with when he talked about his goals over 2025.
Yeah.
He clearly had an understanding of who they would have on their team.
Sure.
You don't make those, I think, statements unless you have some sort of understanding of, who is potentially going to be on the roster. Of course, we're not going to put him in a position to have to say that, but like you said, Rye, I think we will happily, as a show and as pundits, say that a lot of those signings have to be fairly confirmed.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, this Anthem team, I think, is going to look a whole lot different. I think what he said with these guys on this Anthem squad, a playoff push is definitely not out of the question. Talk about, I loved your question about, him being a leader in that locker room. Even when he's talking, man, like, I want to run through a wall. Like if I was playing with Anthem and hearing some of the things that he was saying, like, I'm like, man, I'm ready to strap on the boots and ready to go. So much so that that as a former Dallas Jackals fan who don't have it.
Oh no.
Should I hop on the Anthem bandwagon? Should I?
I mean, I think you might have to.
I don't know.
You might have to. You got to get the racing stripes. You got to get that Daytona stuff,
I don't know if I can see. I have a lot of conflicting interests here, right? Because I'm obviously a Canadian.
Yeah.
How do I cheer for a program that is essentially rooting on for Canada's biggest rival? But as a totality, if Anthem is doing well, kind of like what I was alluding to in one of those points, if the Anthem is doing well, that leads and means and reflects that the USA rugby squad's doing well, which also means that rugby in North America as a whole is doing well, which is ultimately what we want. So
Yeah.
what do I do here? I have some time to think about. Maybe by the time
Gotta make some decisions.
he gets back on the show and we have him closer to the season, I'll
Hey,
have that figured out.
all
But
I'll say is that you better announce that before they make all these crazy signings, because it is getting eerily close to you becoming just a bandwagon.
it is true. It is true. Very, very true. Anyways, thank you again to Jake Turnbull for hopping on the show. Really, really good stuff there. You ready to move on to our last segment of the show?
Yeah, I'm starting to get kind of angry the fact that Tilsonberg's not letting our true degenerate
I know.
continue to be part of this. And we're just gonna have to keep carrying this segment without our true degenerate.
See, it's
not as good without him, but
ever since Vandy stopped appearing on this show on these extended breaks, that's when he started to win money.
Well, not last week.
Not last week, but let's get into it. It is time for Triple D, Devin's Degenerate Dambles, brought to you by Betstamp. Betstamp betting made easy. We partnered with Betstamp to do our Fantasy Ruckers betting challenge, and they are offering our viewers and listeners the best new user deals at sportsbooks available in your area. You can use the link down below, signupexpert.com/thefantasyruckers, where it will geolocate where you are, pull up all the sportsbooks available in your location, and have those new user deals ready. I just found out that the Fanatics Sportsbook just started in Pennsylvania. I was able to hop on some new user deals there. You might have sportsbooks in your area that you don't even know about, and you can hop on some free money. So check that link down below. And what we've done with this Fantasy Ruckers betting challenge is started off with $50. Me and Vandy are going head to head, making picks each and every week in the rugby world to see who can make the most money.
You're stinking.
And I'm stinking. So let's go through it. The payroll right now that we're standing at, Vandy has bounced back. He got as low as I think like $10, $7, and he's jumped up now. He's got $33 in the bank. I am at a measly $5. I came off of a win last week, was pretty confident there. I think the confidence rode a little bit too high heading into this week because I did
convince you to put down a pretty crazy
crazy parlay last on the show. So I went pretty nuts here on the parlay that I put down, and I went with a 4-leg parlay. You can check it out on socials. It was close to hitting. The only thing that didn't hit was the underdog, where you thought, how the heck are Benetton favorites in that matchup against
because the Stormers stink, and I didn't account for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't account for the Stormers stink.
That should have been something that we probably looked into a little bit. But again,
that's what we do. That's why we're degenerates.
Had a 4-leg parlay there. Everything hit except for, again, that Benetton Treviso pick. And I'm just trying to pull it up now to see what I had. Didn't put much money. It would have won me a whole bunch of money in that sense, but that ended up not being the case. Again, got it correct with Sale being Newcastle, an easy one. Got the one correct of the Lions beating the Gwent Dragons, and got Bath beating Gloucester. Just couldn't get the Sharks beating Benetton Treviso. And then Vandy also losing. He went all in on the underdog in an NPC Bunnings matchup.
I messed up.
He went with Hawke's Bay winning that one, and they did.
There was NPC quarterfinals. Semifinals are this weekend, so we can do all three. Okay. However, I don't know how I feel about betting on playoffs.
Okay. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. But anyways, that's the environment we find ourselves in. I'm sitting at $5 in my payroll. Vandy's sitting at 33.68 cents. So I'm running behind here. I'll probably put in another crazy parlay, and Maddie is going to help me along here to try to figure it out. Let's start off with the Premiership. Is there a thing to be said here? Are we just betting against the Newcastle Falcons every single week? Now, this week is a tougher one. They're facing the other team that does not have a win in the Premiership right now, and that is the Exeter Chiefs. And the line right now, Matt, guess. What do you think the line right now is between the Exeter Chiefs and the Newcastle Falcons?
What? Minus 150 maybe?
No. In terms of the spread.
Oh, spread 7?
It's 12.5 points.
Yeah, we're not betting spread here.
So that's a tough one. Exeter Chiefs, the basement dwellers with the Newcastle Falcons. The Newcastle Falcons do look a whole lot worse than the Exeter Chiefs. I don't think they look 12.5 points worse than that.
Well,
Any other matchups, though, in the Premiership that you'd like?
I mean, one Exeter did come within 5 points of Bristol. So let's just start there. Like, yes, Exeter hasn't won, but I think they've been closer than Newcastle.
Okay.
I would definitely hit. I think if you're going to put a parlay, I would definitely include Exeter over Newcastle in that money line. I'm trying to look at some of these other ones here.
We got Sale and Northampton.
Yep.
Sale is 8.5 underdogs. Saracens, Bristol, 2.5 underdogs for Bristol. Bath and Harlequins, 2.5 underdogs for the Harlequins, and Gloucester and Leicester. Leicester are 11.5 favorites.
I mean, if you're going to put a parlay, I would do Leicester over Gloucester. And I would do, I think, Exeter over Newcastle.
Okay. Money line for Leicester.
Yes.
Okay.
Money line. And honestly, I'd do money line for both of those if you're doing parlay.
All right. No chance that Leicester can beat Gloucester by 11.5 points?
I just, in a parlay scenario, I would not take that
Okay.
chance.
All right. Moving on over. What's the other league you want to talk about, Matt? Which one you
Let's
have
do
picks in?
URC. I like
All right.
URC. I don't want to talk top 14.
Okay.
I hardly know URC. Top 14 is even worse.
All right. Which match do
I've
you
got
like?
two ones. I got two ones here that
Okay.
I mean,
And
hey,
I'll tell you
Ryan,
the spread.
if you're throwing crazy parlays here, all right, money line Glasgow over the Sharks,
Okay.
money line Munster over the Stormers. Do all four of those.
So this is what's funny is who do you think is favorites in that Glasgow Sharks matchup?
No, don't tell me the Sharks are favorites.
The Sharks are favorites by 6.5. Who do you think
What
is
do, what do I not know?
Who do you think are favorites in the Munster Stormers?
Don't tell me the Stormers.
The Stormers are 7.5 favorites. So
Ryan, you got to take these now. Ryan.
yes.
Ryan.
You told me that with Bennett and Treviso, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, but I feel way more confident about these ones.
Okay. So you're thinking.
I think.
No, you can't throw that in there at the end, Maddie. You can't throw the I think.
Look, the closer we get to non New Zealand rugby, basically the closer we get.
No, I don't like this. I don't like this because you're going from Ryan, you got to take those now.
Look,
I think to I know nothing about.
I have a good feeling. I think Glasgow versus Munster. I like it. Glasgow and Munster. Glasgow over the Sharks. Munster over the Stormers. Money line. I think I like it. All I've seen on social media is Stormers are stunks. They stunks. That's all they do.
Okay.
They stunks.
So Maddie.
What's up?
If I money line parlay both the Glasgow, who are sitting as plus 250 underdogs, and Munster as plus 230 underdogs, if I just bet $2, I will win $20.
What if you do them separately?
I will win double my money. So I would so if I bet $2, if I bet $1 on Glasgow, I would win 3.
Brian, here's my thought for you. All right. You're running low on funds.
Yes.
Put $1 on Stormers and Munster. I mean, sorry.
Put Munster over Stormers.
Warriors. No. Yeah, Munster over Stormers. Glasgow over Sharks. All right.
Okay.
That's your first parlay. The next parlay, what if you put just $1 on Leicester over Gloucester and Exeter over Newcastle? That's not that much, right? Can't be that much.
Let's see here. Money line. Exeter and Leicester. No, it's not that much. Not worth it. Minus 238 odds.
So, I mean, maybe it's just this URC one. You just throw $1 in, you get 10. Next week, you got $15.
Yeah. All right. You know what I might do? Okay, which one are you more confident?
Literally, both of them I have the same confidence in, but I love Glasgow, so.
All right, you're making me do this. All right.
I think the one thing why the Stormers and the Sharks might be favorites is because I think both the games are in South Africa. However.
No. Oh, yes. They're both in South Africa. Yes.
I believe in Glasgow. I believe in Munster. It'll be all right.
All right. Anything from the NPC Bunnings that you want to throw in?
Well, they're in playoffs. I don't know what the lines are.
Okay,
but
so we got Canterbury, Bay of Plenty, Waikato,
Yep.
and Wellington. What do you think the lines are? So let's start with Canterbury, Bay
Well-
of Plenty. What do you think the line is?
I'm gonna say Canterbury's are the dogs by what, 3 points?
It's close. Canterbury's the dogs by 1.5.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I'm gonna say what, Wellington are the favorites by 3 or 1.5
Wellington
maybe.
are the favorites by 7.5.
No.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That Waikato 7.5 looks kind of cheeky.
Do you think they would lose less than 7.5? I mean, I'm more than happy to bet on my Waikato boys. You know I am.
I think so. I think the only thing is that I think a lot of the All Blacks may or may not be leaving. But you might have. I think you have Aaron Gruden still, and Aaron Gruden's,
All right.
I don't know. That one's a tough one, but out of the two, I like taking the Waikato money line.
You mean the
against
spread?
Wellington? Or sorry, the spread
Okay.
against Wellington.
Is there any way Waikato straight up wins?
Yeah, that's why I'm taking the spread.
Okay, you don't think Waikato can win?
I think they can, but I think it gives you the spread gives you a bit more
Okay.
leeway.
All right. So the 3 picks that Matthew's got is Munster money line over the Stormers, sitting at plus 230 underdogs, and then Glasgow over the Sharks at plus 215 underdogs. If you parlay those together on DraftKings, you get plus 915. And then in the NPC Bunnings, he's liking the 7.5 spread that Waikato is getting against Wellington. All right. We'll see whether or not I come back with some more money. It would be spicy.
Yeah.
If the first show that Vandy comes back,
I just looked at Monsters lineup from last week. They got Alex Nankiville, a nice man from the Chiefs. So you got to believe in Munster.
All right. Well, that was our Triple D Devin's Degenerate Dambles, brought to you by Betstamp. Again, check down the link down below to get the best new user deals that are available in sportsbooks in your area.
Yes,
and also does support the show. Yeah, great episode, Maddie. Again, just a whole bunch of stuff that's happening over the course of the past week. You can expect even more to happen. Again, next episode, we're going to deep dive into the dispersal draft and talk about the fantasy impact of some of these guys that are going to these new places. I think to Jake's point, to Maddie's point, we're going to find a little bit more about these guys being solidified who actually sign contracts, hopefully within the next little bit. And we should have more things coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, and we didn't get into it much this episode, but that's because we're just leaving it. We're leaving you in suspense. We wanted to give Jake the full show here. We're leaving you in suspense. There's a lot of picks there that are going to have fantasy impact if they play for the team that they got drafted by.
That's true. So
and we're going to have to go into that.
You're going to want to tune in to episode 130 for that deep dive. But again, thank you to Jake Turnbull for joining the show and giving us a little bit of insight into USA Rugby, the Anthem Rugby Carolina squad, and everything else that is the MLR. Vandy will hopefully get his internet figured out and be back next week. Maddie, anything left for the people?
Just figure it out, Vandy. Figure it out, Tilsonberg.
Just figure it out. All right. For Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I am Ryan Yee, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Let's go.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.